All right, Piston fans, let's talk some Pistons, and we're going to particularly talk about Mr. Blake Griffin. And I'm going to hope that this will be a quick video, but I can rant and and all that good stuff. So I'm going to say about Mr. Blake Griffin, and the reason why early on in the season why I suggested that he come off the bench is because the style of play that he is not going to support the style of play that the team is assembling. But at the same time, it's not going to be easy fix to move him because of his contract and so forth. Now, his contract is not that bad to another team if they have something going out that they don't want, and that I don't want could be from an in-house, implosion, or it could be just simple fact that their contract is just really outrageous and they don't want to. It don't just match up to the amount of effort or so forth that the person is producing on the court or off the court. So it could be a combination of that, or it could be whatever the case may be. But they may just find a team that's in contention, and they could be just a Blake Griffin away. Now, a Blake Griffin on a contender's team is considered a bad contract, but it's not a bad contract because more likely his capability is, even as limited as it is still is respectable. Well, to the fact that for if you have like say for example, if I were to move him to let's say if I were to move him to Golden State, if I move him to Golden State, if of course it's saying that you have a healthy of course, you got Wiseman, a healthy Curry and Klay Thompson, and and they coming along. Now, you can move him from over there, and he doesn't have to be the focus guy. The guy that he is with Detroit, because they have really a lot of untapped talent, and he has to be the guy. But at the point of his career and the impact of his injuries and so forth, and he really need to go to a team where you don't have to be the guy. He could just be. It's almost equivalent to having having a starter come off your bench, a key starter. So I'm not saying Golden State would take him, but if they did, it would probably cost. If Golden State were to take him, it would cost the Pistons the amount what they gave up to get Blake. Now, of course, the players that they gave up, excuse me, Avery Bradley, the 7-footer, I can't think of his name, Murison, I think this is not Murison. Wow, I think I'm Murison. But you guys probably know what I'm talking about. The 7'7" guy, 7'5" guy, him and a draft pick, a number 1 draft pick at that, and I think two other players. So it was a haul to get Blake Griffin. So the Pistons was actually had to take back a haul and give a haul. What I mean by that, they would probably have to take back 2 bad contracts and give up maybe a couple first, maybe a first and maybe a young player and maybe a second round or something like that. They would have to package a deal to get Blake to go to another team. And that's pretty much any team. So the cost that it would take to get rid of Blake is probably equivalent to the cost that it took to get him. So the question becomes, with the amount of young talent on this team, do you want to continue to keep building, or do you want to go ahead or you can survive with the young talent that you have, and you groom that you can mortgage the future, such as a future draft pick or so. So that's my quick little take on Blake Griffin. Once again, I believe that he is a clog to the youth movement, and that's why I suggested that he's coming off the bench, even at the money that they're paying him. He still will get starter minutes. He just needs to come off the bench, such as like a Jalen Rose. And if I were to say, Jalen Rose and Blake Griffin probably need to reverse roles. What I mean by that, Jalen Rose probably should start, and Killian Hayes should probably play with Blake Griffin to slow the game down for him so he can evolve. Derrick Rose could start and develop a tempo, and then so forth, and they actually have more security with the ball, because I would be dependent on him to be more cerebral and more mature with the ball versus a Killian Hayes that's really haven't found out his game yet. He knows his game overseas, but in terms of what is a totally different environment, totally different players he's playing up against, he has to master his opponents, and he haven't been through anybody to understand who he's going up against, let alone to give him enough confidence to play his game. First and foremost, and let me add this too as well. With Killian Hayes, he should be a pass first point guard first versus being a scoring point guard, a scoring point guard, or a score first, pass second point guard. So he should just focus on passing the ball, being a distributor, and that will make the game become a lot more easier. Because if teams will start respecting him on the pass, that's going to open up everything for everybody else, and the game will come to him more like easier. So then he could be able to pick his lane to drive or not like that. Become a facilitator first, and then let his game, develop versus coming out trying to evolve. I want to suggest that, throw that largely, I don't want to say a blame, but basically a criticism towards Casey. If you're known for grooming young talents and everything else, that should be one thing that he should be groomed at. Not practice on his 3-point shot, not shooting the 3-point shot, but focus on what he does well. He's a playmaker, or he's a facilitator. He can see different things, so let him focus on that. And if he does make mistakes, he's making mistakes on something that he could bounce back to, because that's something that he's familiar with. He's not a scorer. He can shoot, but he's not a scorer. And if they keep giving him the green light to score, it could stunt his growth at the same time, and more so than it could actually to allow his growth to speed up and so forth. So that's my take on that. And if there's anything else that I want to talk about with the Pistons, if I may say this, as far as I made the suggestion about Blake Griffin going to Golden State, and I don't see this likely happening, but at the same time, I would suggest that if he did, it would go for maybe Draymond Green and with Oubre, him, and then of course they can actually, if they can, they could add another 3-team trade or whatever, because I think Blake Griffin for Draymond Green will be like a $14 million, whatever. So they have to fill in the blank, and I don't know if there's any teams that would like to give up any, unless they can get another team involved where they got another bad contract on their team. So, and with Draymond, you're getting a guy who I believe he has 4 years on his contract, 3 to 4 years. So if I'm going to add another team, if I'm the Pistons, if I'm going to take on a contract, it got to be a guy with at least 2 years on his contract. I mean, at the most 2 years, not at least. At the most 2 years, because I'm already taking on Draymond. And I'm not using Draymond to be like my whatever, but I do need him to be like a leader, like a tone setter leader. Not Golden State leader, but Pistons DNA leadership. Now I'm looking at you to be, but then again, at the same time, I may not want to make that trade for Draymond, because he may or he may not stunt the growth of a guy like Isaiah Stewart. But at the same time, I could look at like an Isaiah Stewart, maybe a Sadiq Bey, Josh Jackson, even Sekou, even Plumlee, and especially Jeremy Grant. I believe all the defensive players can benefit off of his approach to the game, his demeanor to the game. Now I don't know how the lineup will go. Derrick Rose, of course, will have to be Derrick Rose. Killian will be my starters, and so forth, unless that's part of a deal or something. But I mean my point guards. But then it depends which way I want to go. I may have to give up like some young talent though, like somebody like Svi or another player or so. It depends. It depends on where Golden State is or how they feel about their team moving forward. If they want to go from Draymond or not, and if they can get another team involved, it depends. But a guy like Draymond Green at this point of his career, it may be year or two too late for him to come to the Pistons because I think he's set in his ways of like how he is, and he may not have to give 100. He may be at the place where he doesn't have to give 100%, 100%. That hungry ball type deal. So, uh, yeah. So he's the first guy that I'm looking at. I'm not looking at shooters per se. I may look at a scorer, but it has to be a scorer that plays defense as well. Because I believe this team it should be more defensive minded first, and that's why you saw you saw how they won against Boston, and that's what I was saying from the beginning how Killian Hayes shouldn't start because I would want the team to be more controlled up front, out the gate, and be more manageable where you're establishing defense. I don't. It doesn't. You don't have to, for me personally. You don't have to win off of offense. You can win off of defense. Just have some players that's in position to score when necessary. If it's going get into the basket, get to the foul line, whatever. I understand that the game is stretched out to the three ball a lot, but if you play solid D, to some degree, you can withstand all that. And then at the same time, the other team has to be, have to hit the shots. The saying goes, greater offense can be great defense. So I will make that be the case. If you're going to beat us with the three ball, you better have like a greater offense than our defense. But that's what I'm trying to get the max out of my guys, where you get a guy like that can play defense, such as Sadiq Bey or Josh Jackson, Jeremy Grant, Isaiah Stewart, and I'm sure I'm missing somebody. And actually, I think that kind of even with if you brought if I go back to the Draymond Green deal, if you brought him over here, I think it will bring a little bit more toughness out of Plumlee. There's something about Draymond Green. I don't know if he lost it, like this motor, this hunger that he had. That may be the problem. What I'm saying is getting Draymond Green could be equivalent to Detroit getting Stackhouse. They got Stackhouse at a point where he pretty much, cemented himself, or he was comfortable with himself. So his game didn't have to adjust. His game didn't have to improve. He had to do more. So that may be the thing that may be costly against the Pistons if they were to receive a player like Draymond Green. Otherwise, if not, then you're looking at if he still got the motor going, you look at a guy of his motor of like what he has inside of him is very infectious, where it rubs off on a player where this team it's not just a pushover team. This team is already got defensive players, but it become like a stamp, like we're going to outwork everybody. So I can fly with that. So with that being said, Pistons fans, I salute.